Hey everyone, welcome back to the Blue Saints podcast. Today we are going to collaborate with Mike Solan. Mike Solan is the president of the Seattle Police Officers Guild. So he's my counterpart out in the Pacific Northwest in the city of Seattle. He's the president of their union, SPOG they call it, the Seattle Police Officers Guild. Mike is one of the main reasons I started this podcast. He's had a podcast going now for a few years. He's probably cut 50 episodes. This is episode 4 for me. So we're going to jump into a collaborative today, talk to Mike a little bit about the relationship, not necessarily the relationship, but perhaps the correlation between Seattle, the Twin Cities, what's happened out there in the past, what's happening here now. Are we looking at Seattle 2.0 here? It's good to get a little bit of perspective from him because, as you know, it wasn't long ago, again, post-George Floyd, they had a chop zone in Seattle, which where some of these activists took over city blocks. And that happened for, I think, a month or two where you weren't even allowed in there unless these chop security guards, crazy people that took the space over would allow you in. Super dangerous. So we're going to kind of compare and contrast a little bit with respect to how things have gone in the past in Seattle, how they're going now. How closely do are the things that are happening in the Twin Cities right now reflect kind of where Seattle was, where Seattle is, and just get a handle, a little compare and contrast of the Twin Cities versus Seattle. So Mike Solan, awesome guy. Please tune in. He's really smart. He's articulate. He's very centered. He's not an extreme person. Again, we both believe that this is paramount. We got to keep politics out of public safety. We need to. And right now, in the Twin Cities, that's something we're battling from the local law enforcement perspective, is to keep some of the politics, all the politics out of what's happening right now with respect to the federal government coming into town and enforcing immigration law. So tune in. It's going to be a cool episode. I'd love to collaborate with Mike. He's a fine man. He's a great leader. And just enjoy. Mike, thanks. And welcome everybody to the Blue Saints podcast. This is episode 4. I'm new. I'm a new guy. So thanks for your assistance and leadership with this, but thought it was an appropriate time for you and I to collaborate a little bit and talk about Seattle versus the Twin Cities. And kind of what comes to mind for me is, are we headed that direction? Are we Seattle 2.0?
Well, I think you guys are trying to definitely be a copycat for what happened about 6 years ago. As you know, we lost 6 square city blocks to the mob, the unreasonable activists, as I call them. We had deaths, rapes, robberies, shootings, you name it. And cops could not go into those sections of the city. Absolute bizarro land. A lot of the stuff being unpacked here civilly as people are suing due to the death and destruction. And it appears as that the politics from then is continuing with the far left, I think, the unreasonable, insane activists that are just pushing politics into public safety, and it's holding your community in the Twin Cities hostage, and it's completely unnecessary. A lot of the links that we're noticing on X are off the charts. We've got a mayor, which I'll play here in a bit, a mayor in Minneapolis saying that local police should intervene and arrest federal law enforcement officers, ICE officers. I mean, this is just off the charts insanity. So I want to get your take, man. I mean, you said Seattle 2.0. I think you're absolutely right. What are you worried about?
I'm worried about, when I think about Seattle, I think of the chop zone. I think of homelessness just rampantly out of control. I think of open air drug use. I think of just about the worst local government you could find. Those are the things that come to mind originally, outside of the beauty of the Pacific Northwest, which comes to mind. And I think, geez, I've never been. And so I've heard people say recently, oh, well, I've been out to Seattle lately, and it's not as bad as people say it is. Is that true?
Well, it depends upon where you go. I would definitely think in terms of let's just keep the politics conversation going when in terms of public safety, it is really bad.
Okay.
It's not just in Seattle, it's across the entire state. There's now a measure in Olympia, which is now getting a lot of traction in terms of videos with a local sheriff in Pierce County, Sheriff Swank, who's going really hard in the paint with the legislature here in Olympia, Washington, about a couple bills where these politicians with basically a Democrat supermajority in Olympia are now trying to remove communities to have the ability to elect their sheriffs. So where Seattle resides in King County, the King County sheriff, the ability to vote for who was sheriff was removed, I want to say around 2018. Now they want to take that stuff statewide as if their powers would be likely completely unchecked by sheriffs of counties. So that's getting kinetic for sure. Kinetic, I mean, not violent, but I would say that at least war of words, I should say. Be a little bit clearer with my words. But so that's what's going on. It's like the politics is intentionally infused in the public safety conversation. It's been going on for about a decade, but more so post-2020 on steroids. And so, yeah, Pacific Northwest is gorgeous, but this state has the lowest amount of officers across the nation per capita. There's a reason for that. It's because it's extremely, at least politically talking, anti-law enforcement. And the bills in Olympia, which is the state capital, reflect that. Now, if you add this fuel to the fire by removing the ability for people to elect their sheriff of their county, that's almost like the last straw. So that's getting pretty heated. Happened yesterday in Olympia. But what I'm witnessing happen in the Twin Cities, which is cause for concern for everybody in this nation, particularly in Minnesota, and for you running a labor union with cops who are just trying to do their jobs. Unfortunately, the politicians who are elected are now running roughshod over what's reasonable and trying to pit local and state law enforcement against the federal government, all because of the Trump administration, as they blame for all the problems in our society. And as they were targeting us in 2020 with these riots, officers getting assaulted, many of them had to leave the career with career-ending injuries, a lot of PTSD claims. You know, the profession is on its knees to a degree. And I think evidence of that is the lack of what would be positive numbers in recruitment. I mean, it's we're desperate to try to get cops to join this profession, but that's what happens when people look at the profession and say, you know what? Yeah, the way the ship is trying to be corrected by these politicians is to throw money to incentivize people to want to be cops. But the problem is it's too politicized still. And evidence of that is, you know, the mayor of Minneapolis going hard in the paint with something I thought in a press conference was absolutely bizarre. So I'm going to play this for you. I'm going to want your comment on it. And to me, if you look at the body language of the Minneapolis PD police chief, I think his facial expression says it all. I just wish the chief would have stepped up and led from the front and actually course-corrected the mayor. But this is just bizarro land. Give this a listen.
What I can tell you for certain is that this is not sustainable. This is an impossible situation that our city is presently being put in. And at the same time, we are trying to find a way forward to keep people safe, to protect our neighbors, to maintain order. And we're in a position right now where we have residents that are asking the very limited number of police officers that we have to fight ICE agents on the street, to stand by their neighbors.
Look at that face.
We cannot be at a place right now in America where we have two governmental entities that are literally fighting one another.
And so what he just basically asked is basically almost inserted cops against cops. To me, I've never heard of that before from an elected official. You saw the reaction from a cop, the chief of police there. Yes, it's right to have that type of face if you're the chief to say, what did I just hear? But then again, at that point, I wish that chief would have moved the mayor aside and said, absolutely not, hard stop. This is crazy. What say you?
I listened to it and I'm trying to determine if he's just repeating what he's really hearing or what he believes. And, he says we can't be at this place where we have two governmental agencies, law enforcement agencies, pitted against one another, whatever his words were. And I hope that's truly what he believes. But I will tell you, there has been a lot of political rhetoric here as of late that's really dangerous. And those types of things are dangerous. And I know we cannot have local cops going after the feds out in the street. That's a no-go. That's horrible. I can't even imagine it, to be quite honest. It's actually crazy. It's crazy to even think about that, regardless of what people think about the federal government and this administration. But our own governor last week made a comment on a news conference, and he said, we've never been at war with the federal government before. Governor Walz of Minnesota. We've never been at war with the federal government before. Think about that. It doesn't take a genius to figure this out. There is no more powerful, I guess, government in this world than our federal government. There's no state in this land that would stand a chance taking them on. First of all, it's just wrong. Okay, so let's just rewind this a little bit. Locally, our politicians have said you are not going to cooperate with federal immigration enforcement or Border Patrol at all. You're prohibited from doing that. So now we are in a position where there are circumstances where I think, had we at least been able to just communicate a little bit in terms of maybe some ICE agents or Border Patrol saying, hey, we're going to do this operation on this date and time in this place. We might be out there for a couple of hours. It'd be nice if you had some resources available to provide us with a mobile field force contingent just to handle crowd control, because you're much more familiar with your community and doing these things than we are. That would be really helpful. It's strictly prohibited by both the St. Paul mayor, Minneapolis mayor, St. Paul City Council, Minneapolis City Council. They want us to treat these people like they are some kind of a foreign adversary invading the state of Minnesota. We don't take federal law enforcement action. That is not in our jurisdiction, and you know that. We enforce state and local laws. That's what we do as city cops. We don't get into immigration issues. However, we can do well in those crowd control situations and manage those crowds so that the federal agents can do whatever they're legally allowed to do, and at the same time, we can manage the crowd, make sure that people are allowed to exercise their First Amendment rights, while at the same time not interfere, impede, attack federal law enforcement officers. And it's good for everybody. And I truly think that the Renee Good shooting in Minneapolis, I think that could have been prevented had we collaborated a little bit on the front end and had been provided with the opportunity to provide crowd control. Again, I don't know all the aspects of it. I don't know how they got to where they got and how quickly those things are happening. But where we're at now today is when Tom Homan said we're going to flood the zone is flooded. So we have teams of HSI agents all over the Twin Cities, and we have a bunch of Border Patrol agents in the Twin Cities as well. And what I have seen, I don't have any operational information on any of this. What I've seen is it appears that Border Patrol is now taking care of crowd control for HSI while they're going out and doing their jobs. Now, you and I both know that, well, I'm not going to turn against our federal law enforcement partners. They got into these jobs for the same reason that we did. All right, their missions are good. They want to keep the country safe. They want to chase down bad guys and arrest them. They want to keep drugs out of our country. They want to get the human traffickers. They want to keep the gang members out and the drug cartels. I mean, these people got into, again, a noble profession, and now it's been overly politicized. So what we have is these people, these Border Patrol agents that are coming in, I assume, mostly from the southern border. And now they're inserted in this this urban environment in an environment where these people have actually, this type of protest, often violent protest, has been normalized. It's been accepted. At times it's been promoted and facilitated by our local government officials. And these guys operate under a little different set of rules. They're not going to take the stuff that we take. I mean, we have allowed these people to push us so far. We allow so much horrible behavior in the interest of keeping the peace. We've allowed these protesters to be able to get away with, for lack of a term, they've gotten away with murder. Do whatever, they throw stuff, yell, cross our lines. We're not arresting people. It's a really soft sell. Well, now you've got these folks that are generally down on the southern border, have done a lot of work down there in really dangerous conditions. They're going to engage these unruly people much more quickly than we do and in a different way. And the people up here, they're not used to that. They're not used to that. They've been given a mile. Well, the Border Patrol agents won't barely give them an inch. And I'm not saying that's wrong. It's different than the way we do things. And these people up here, they're not used to that. They're used to being pandered to. And so now there's a lot of friction out there. And we haven't been allowed to coordinate at all with them. And I don't think it's the best place to be. I would love it if cooler heads could prevail, if we could get everybody in a room together and say, how can we make this work best in the Twin Cities right now? Because the federal government's not going anywhere until they're done, until they've achieved what they wanted to achieve, whether the people here like it or not. And again, I'm not even going to get into that. It doesn't matter what I think personally or other people think personally, where your politics are. This is where we're at today. So let's figure out how we can do this best and safest for not only our partners on the federal side, but our communities and definitely the cops you and I are charged with representing. It's important that they're kept safe. So it's a mess right now is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great breakdown, man. And I really like the fact that you're informing the listeners of what you believe local law enforcement could have done to collaborate with making those scenes safe for public safety crowd control measures. I mean, the law enforcement on the federal side have a right to go into these areas and conduct law enforcement public safety business. And for decades, local law enforcement, state law enforcement have always assisted and been partners with federal law enforcement for multiple investigations and public safety issues. Now, because President Trump is in office, the Democrats in control of these cities are now putting politics ahead of common sense public safety. And now it's becoming everybody in the community's problem because they're trying to pit law enforcement against law enforcement. And it's not going to work. It's not. And we have a duty, we have an oath that we swore to uphold the Constitution, to protect life and property, period. And I've always said this, especially when I'm interviewed, is when it comes to getting another law enforcement's back, meaning assisting them if they're in trouble physically, if they're going to get hurt, we have to go. It's our oath. Regardless of politics, we're going. And I've said that multiple times. So even if you're in a sanctuary city where these politics are so dialed up in a negative way, they have to understand that cops have a duty to intervene to save life and property. So I just wish these politicians could understand that. And when they speak so ill-advised, like the mayor of Minneapolis, those words mean something. And it's inciting the lack of cooperation and violence within the profession. And it's absolutely unacceptable. And he should immediately apologize. In his words, I'm going to condemn him because that is so beyond the pale of what's reasonable. It's devoid of common sense.
And none of this political rhetoric it doesn't surprise you in Seattle. It doesn't surprise me here. And again, they're just so dug in. And the biggest problem from my perspective is it pits our members, the St. Paul police officers, in the middle of all this. And we're the one group of people who we didn't ask for this. We don't want to be in the middle of it. If people would just change the way they message this at the highest levels, again, leaders actually leading and just saying, listen, there's nothing we're going to be able to do right now about the federal government and what they're doing here in the Twin Cities and coming in here and enforcing these immigration laws.
But they will never say that.
No, they
because
won't.
now it's all about politics now, and so we're going to be caught in the middle. Cops are going to get hurt.
Yeah.
Citizens are going to get hurt because of this. The riots are continuing. This is Seattle 2.0 in the Twin Cities,
And
you guys are in it.
And you know as well as I do, the more rhetoric that comes out of the Twin Cities and the governor, the harder the federal government's going to come down here in the Twin Cities. That's the way. That's the way it's going to be.
You nailed it. I mean, Mark Ross nails it, and to me, it's a tragic development, but an expected development because politics is intentionally being inserted into public safety from what appears to be local and state officials. I haven't heard the rhetoric to that degree that I've condemned the mayor's rhetoric from the federal government. I haven't heard any of that. I'd like anybody to put in the comments a link that captures that type of sentiment that I heard from the mayor, but it's absolutely unconscionable, those words. And then so what those words do and how politics is pushed in a media landscape where you have legacy media saying a narrative, not the narrative. And then you have influencers who are spotlighting this crime and the criminals conducting major acts of violence and crime. You get the community to be put at risk because of these issues. So I'm going to share with you some footage that people captured of some of the violence that is unfolding in your Twin Cities that you've seen, but also this is reminiscent in Seattle in 2020 where people, the mob, broke into law enforcement vehicles and actually took rifles and other firearms out of police vehicles. It's absolutely insane.
Almost there.
Oh, wow. Oh my God. Oh my God.
And this is just mob mentality. Somebody says, get the bullets, they're laughing. I mean, this is societal decay right here. And then they're taking the patches off of the Velcro safe box in the back. So to me, man, this is just, that's just below, it's just, as a law enforcement professional, you're like, man, broken arrow. I don't like to see that stuff because it's just demoralizing. It's a breakdown in public safety for sure. And then obviously those independent reporters and journalists have video and they're capturing this. So your governor in Minnesota was, to your point earlier about the press conference he had, he was demanding or saying to the constituents, get your cell phones out and record the atrocities that are occurring. Well, you know what? Cell phones and cameras were brought out showing the criminal atrocities that are occurring from the mob mentality against public safety law enforcement professionals.
Yeah. And sadly, to your point, you're exactly right. The mob mentality is a real thing. You get these groups of people together. There are professional agitators there. In my last podcast, I talked about professional. Oh, some of them are paid, but they're professional agitators. And in my last podcast, I talked about it at length because some people tried to go after me a little bit online about using the term professional agitators. And again, my perspective is
truth.
If you show up at these and you've got a gas mask and you've got milk for your eyes in case you're exposed to chemical irritant, and you've got whistles, and you've got a bullhorn, and you've got your vest, and you've got projectiles that you might throw at cops, to me, you're a professional agitator. That fits the definition enough for me.
It's the same getup
Yeah.
that we saw in 2020, the George Floyd riots. I'm willing to bet a paycheck, if not more, that we're seeing some of the agitators that were in Seattle occupying the Chaz Chop catastrophe. A lot of the people on the riot lines that threw frozen water bottles, rocks, metal objects at cops. I'm willing to bet that some of those same paid professional agitators are in the Twin Cities doing the same type of destruction. I'm willing to bet it.
I wouldn't be a bit surprised. And right now, this is eerily reminiscent of the post-Floyd riots. We're not there yet. I pray that we do not get there. But it is reminiscent of that. That's kind of the feeling. There's a lot of tension in the air. But back to that mob mentality, what they do is they will come here and they will get generally some normal people that would usually just be out there watching, maybe holding a sign, chanting a little bit. And all of a sudden they're in this large group and there's a little more anonymity there, and they start doing things they normally wouldn't do because of the psychological impact that it has on them. The agitators know that. They do it intentionally, and here's the problem with it. What we've been asking our community members to do is tell those people, no, we're not doing that here. We don't do that in the Twin Cities.
You're better than that.
We have a better relationship, specifically in St. Paul. We have a better relationship with our police department. And you know what? We may be out here protesting, but we know they're going to do the right thing. And they're going to allow us to exercise our First Amendment rights, even though we don't agree with it. And what has happened is these people will come in and they drive a wedge between us and our own community. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. Most of these people aren't from here.
Yeah, it's intentional.
100% intentional. And they do get this mob mentality going. And just the other night, we've got a federal law enforcement vehicle that's stalled or whatever reason. They had to leave it. They had to get out. The feds had to leave the car there, or it was there unattended. And all of a sudden, these people break into the car. They hook up tow straps to the gun safe with a truck or SUV. They rip the gun safe out of there with these tow straps out of the vehicle. They access the safe. Apparently, they got a rifle out of it. So now we have some criminal running around Minneapolis with a federal officer's rifle. And again, to your point, and this is really important, I want to highlight this. These politicians will continually say, record the police. If they're doing things they shouldn't be done, we want them investigated. Which, by the way, if we're doing things we should not be doing, we will be investigated and held to account for whatever those things might be. Again, if we're doing things we shouldn't be doing, which, as you know, is pretty rare, but it does happen, and we're held to account for it. But they're not calling for investigations for the people assaulting our cops, for their own employees.
That's right.
For our own union members of city employees. They're not saying, you know what, if you throw a bottle or you throw a large metal object and you hurt one of our cops, we're going to investigate you. We're coming after you. I don't hear that ever. That's disappointing.
Well, dude, absolutely, you nailed it. And what I think is right on is that here's another example of some of the mob mentality. And this is, if you look at these pictures, it is the same type of MO that we saw in 2020, where you said, where they were saying, the activists, is F12, right? The police, all this stuff, the same type of graffiti, the same destruction. These are intentional. This sends a message. It sends a message of public safety breaking down, law and order collapsing, and all driven by politics. And then, to your point about messaging, what happens when you do have cameras out there, as our politicians say, hey, get cameras and record the police? Well, you know what? Sometimes the boomerang comes back and the FAFO moment comes to the individual that broke into that video I just shared about ripping the rifle out of that FBI agent's car. Well, here it is. Welcome to the big leagues with your lame-ass tattoo on your face, captured by federal officers. This is the definition of FAFO. And this should go loud and proud to those that think that if you want to conduct crime and disorder in these types of events, this is what's going to end up happening with you. You're going to be held accountable. You're going to be hunted down and arrested for your criminality. There's no politics in that statement. That's absolute fact and reality. And I wish the politicians would be pushing that message. I heard Tim Waltz say peacefully, but none of these things that I see has been peaceful. Look at all this destruction. What say you?
Yeah, and that guy who did find out, I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess that he may be a felon. Well, he's certainly a felon for stealing that rifle. But if he's a convicted felon, he's in possession of that rifle, he's going to feel the full weight of the federal government now. And I think he's probably going to wish that he hadn't participated in that. But yeah, that's where we're at. I'm quite frankly disgusted by a lot of our politicians here in the state of Minnesota. I think their behavior is disgraceful. I am so frustrated by the fact that these people are so dug in. And I would love to sit down with leadership, political leadership, leadership with our federal law enforcement partners, and try and mediate something, some kind of agreement on here. Here's how this is going to go. You want this to end? You want this to end, Minnesota? This is what we need from you, because so far our folks have said, nope, we're not going to be any part of this. We're going to fight you tooth and nail the entire way. And it's just not working. It's not good for anybody.
Yeah, and I think you really depicted it well. You articulated it well, I should say. And, it shows good leadership on your part. But what they're doing is they're leading from ideological frames in their minds. It's a mindset. It's anti-Trump. And so everything that is in its way, that ideological spin on things, has always got to rule the day. But you mentioned about, partnering with federal partners in communities in terms of trying to find some harmony and understanding and getting information out there. Well, man, a lot of this, the Twin Cities has been in the spotlight for the past month. A lot of the fraud allegations. Now, independent journalists have uncovered what appears to be billions of dollars of fraud, if not more so. It appears to be that politicians are involved or should have known or did know. You've got the governor no longer running for re-election. So it did have some weight to it. And you were part of a conversation with the federal government recently talking about the fraud. I'm just going to play a quick pic or a video of you speaking with a group of people on a panel with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, where you discussed a lot of the fraud that's occurring in the Twin Cities, particularly in the entire state of Minnesota. Here you are right here, bud.
All right,
We have several law enforcement partners here. Mark Ross is president of the St. Paul Police Federation.
Good morning, Mr. Secretary. Thank you. My name is Mark Ross. I am the president of the St. Paul Police Federation. I'm elected by St. Paul police officers, rank and file officers, to represent them in this role. And one of my primary charges in this role is to go out and talk to a lot of people in this room about why we need money and how much money we need to do our jobs effectively. And what I want to do is quantify. I think we're at about $2 billion of known fraud so far, confirmed fraud. What $2 billion means to law enforcement, specifically the St. Paul Police Department. $2 billion could fund our entire police department for the next 10 years.
Dude, that's pretty profound, your breakdown there. And congratulations on being on that panel. You're getting a lot of airtime. It shows you that you're a good, effective leader, and the podcast, Blue Saints, is starting to develop more listeners. You're getting information out on behalf of your members and on behalf of public safety, particularly with our national group, United Coalition of Public Safety. You can find it at United Cops on X. Dude, you're doing great work. I just want to pump your tires for a minute and just say thank you for leading from the front, getting ahead of this, and you're spotlighting how fraud, and you said you earmarked $2 billion, and what $2 billion can do for public safety, particularly in the St. Paul Police Federation auspices, if you will, the department, the police department as a whole. It could be funded for 10 years.
It's wild.
That's stunning. And then $2 billion is just not even getting on the mountain, right?
We're not there. We're not there yet. We're not even close, I don't think. It appears to be so mammoth that it's almost incredibly difficult to even just mentally grasp what's occurring. You know what I mean? It's almost hard to believe the magnitude of the fraud and the amount of money it is. It's literally, we're talking state dollars, we're talking federal dollars. If you are a human being capable of watching or listening to this right now, some of your money was stolen. I mean, people should be really upset by it. And sadly, the worst part, and I spoke to this at that roundtable with the United States Secretary of the Treasury, a lot of these politicians knew what was going on. They were aware of it. And they just kind of turned a blind eye. They didn't want to deal with it. It was bad politically for them.
And that's why I always get back to a lot of these same politicians that you just described as knowing about it, not doing anything about it. Maybe they were complicit, maybe they weren't. I don't know. That'll be proven out in the investigation moving forward. But those same politicians are the ones that are always calling for a consistent police accountability and nauseam.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Which is why I brought up qualified immunity. That's why I brought it up.
Yep. They're trying to neuter law enforcement to not be effective, in my view, of uncovering the fraud, the criminality that's occurring, demoralizing us, so they have ultimate control. I mean, all this stuff, to my opinion, is just related. So I guess, as we close up here, what does the future look like in the coming days in the Twin Cities? What are you expecting? What do you hope to see?
There's a lot of unknowns, and I think that's probably like the $1 million question is how long is this going to go on here? We can't sustain what's going on right now. It just is not sustainable because the tensions are so high and there's so much unrest. I mean, we don't need any more death or destruction here. We've got to put an end to it. So to answer your question, what I know actually is the adults, the so-called leaders actually need to lead. And we need to get people together at the table to have a serious conversation about what this looks like. Because at the end of the day, we talked about this earlier, the more that, again, this term resist, but the more resistance that the federal government is met with, they're going to come at you that much harder. And there is no powerful force on this earth than the United States federal government. It doesn't matter who's running it. Under Biden's federal government, Barack Obama's federal government, George H.W. Bush, Donald Trump, the federal government is the ultimate weapon. And anything we ever do, we've got the greatest nation in the world. We're the most powerful nation in the world for a reason. And to look at the federal government in the eye and continue to push back, I think that's a mistake. I think that we need to compromise here a little bit on some of these things. And again, get to the table, say, okay, you're here, you're doing your thing. What do we need to do to make this go quickly so that you can do your jobs and move on? I don't know. I'm not that optimistic right now that the leadership, again, I'm using quotes. I'm going to say elected officials. I'm going to use that instead of leadership. The elected officials, I'm not confident they're going to make this any better anytime soon. And again, we're stuck in the middle. It's a grinder right now. We are in a really, really tough spot. And I'll tell you what, with respect to that roundtable, the United States Treasury, I mean, we were on the cusp of really diving in to what's going on with this fraud, and now we have this going on. This is again, we've got to focus on a couple different things here. I know the federal government intends to send in hundreds of investigators to look into the fraud. I hope they do that. I hope that remains a focus.
Sure,
because
I'm glad you brought that up because I wonder if any of this is connected to take the focus off of the fraud, right? I mean, but potentially, maybe they're both correlated. I don't know. It'd be great for the viewers and the listeners of this to comment. What are your thoughts? Is this intentionally being done, creating more destruction and chaos in a public safety level to take the focus away from the catastrophic fraud that's being uncovered in Minnesota? And then you got to wonder how many other states are next in terms of this fraud. I know there's some inquiries here in Washington State. It's not looking too good. I'm not sure if it's at the level of what we're uncovering in Minnesota, but the riots these agitators are here for a long time. We've got to buckle up, and I'm praying that we have no more death. I mean, this is it's absolutely unconscionable. There's rumors about the Trump administration doing the Insurrection Act. I mean, this is getting to a point where it's untenable, to your point.
Yeah, I think we could do some things to get ourselves out of this sooner than later with no more carnage, and that should be everybody's goal. We'll just have to see what happens. But I have a question for you, actually. I saw an interview with your mayor a couple of weeks ago, and somebody asked her about fraud in Seattle, if she was going to investigate it or if she was worried about it. She said, no, nonchalant, like there's no possible way that there's any fraud in the city of Seattle. And even if there were, she didn't seem to be too concerned about it. Is that concerning for you? I mean, how do you guys as cops, specifically the police union, how do you view your new mayor, and how is this going to, goal moving forward for your members?
Yeah, I'm not sure how it's going to go forward with the members. I think there's some trepidation because, she's been portrayed as a socialist. And we all know that socialism has never worked on any kind of global scale as it being an effective form of governance. It's more so an ideological control of the populace than anything else that's based on what we know in terms of our republic. We do have a good working relationship with the current mayor's office. I want to maintain that. I can't really judge her too harshly on the fraud components. I think she's trying to stay away from it because it is such a hot political potato to try to juggle. And that's what I think a lot of the media is trying to just get a comment from an elected official to create some more controversy. And I think it remains to be seen if there is fraud. I welcome the investigators uncovering it, and then our elected leaders are going to have to be held accountable. Just as they demand police accountability, I want to see political accountability for our elected leaders. And that's what I care about. I care about protecting the cops. What I don't like is how these elected leaders think that they can use the local officers and state officers as a tool to divide public safety from a federal public safety law enforcement rule of law conversation. It's atrocious. So, hey, I'm more than willing to assist with uncovering fraud where it's needed. If there is a lot of fraud, well, to your point, when you're on that panel, it's money that could be put towards good things for public safety, which helps the community. So if I'm an elected mayor in this city, and if I had that question, I would say, well, we welcome any form of investigation if fraud is alleged, and happy to work with the professional law enforcement officers who are uncovering fraud. And I'll answer your question if indeed that is located and investigated, period.
Yeah.
And that to me, that's just a reasonable response to a question like that. To immediately say there's no fraud. I think it's somebody that just got into office, is a bit new, and needs a little more seasoning to understand how to answer a gotcha question from the media, to then articulate your way around it, but get to a point where, okay, it was a decent answer.
Yeah. We just had a new mayor take over here in St. Paul the beginning of this month. First term. She beat a two-term incumbent. Her name's Cowley Her. We've had a couple meetings. I think she's a good person. We have a good relationship, much like you, and it's important to maintain that level of communication and a professional relationship with your mayor. She's being tested very early in her tenure with what's going on right now, because I don't think she believes in a lot of these things personally or politically, which is fine. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, their style, and she's the boss. She's the mayor. So we're trying to work through these things. But to your point, it's important to maintain a positive relationship with your city leadership as long as you possibly can. At some point, as you know, city leaders can cross a line where there's no going back, and we just hope those things don't happen.
I think you nailed it. So how do people find Blue Saints podcast?
I think it's been well received. The membership appreciates it. It is a great way to get the message out. And again, thanks to you, you're the GOAT with respect to a lot of things. You're a tremendous leader out there. You've been through a lot. If people are watching this, they may or may not know, but Mike's a guy, I consider him a good friend. I can call him anytime as a resource for things that are going on here. I ask him probably once or twice a month. I'll call him or text him and have a question for him. You've led your people really well, and I appreciate the help from you getting this thing going. It's a great tool to provide information for people, but the overwhelming response has been very positive.
That's excellent, man.
It's been good, so thank you.
Dude, that's awesome, and I'm really pumped, and I've always been pushing. You have to have a pro public safety narrative out there and have a platform where you can counter legacy media's narratives, if you will. And I think you're doing a great job, folks. If you can find Blue Saints podcast, wherever you consume podcasts, find them, the St. Paul Police Federation on X as well. You got to get we got to get the support from you, people that live in these communities And the way we can combat these unreasonable activists, some of these paid activists that continue to cause mayhem and destruction, which we've highlighted here in this podcast, is you got to get off the bench and you have to vote. You got to get involved politically. All we're asking, you grab 10 of your friends, get your ballot in, go vote, push for candidates that have a pro-public safety message, not one of ideological bends that cause more problems than we're witnessing right now. It's just it's absolutely unbelievable what's occurring. So, hey, Mark, thanks so much for joining Hold the Line with Mike Solan. It was great to be part of the Blue Saints podcast. I'll see you next time, brother. Stay safe out there, man.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me. Blue Saints podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Blue Saints, we're the men and women in blue. We're in the saintly city. We're doing God's work. That's what saints do. So everybody be safe out there. We'll see you soon. Thank you.